Hello. Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for our attendees. This is another event that we have as Equasys we have organized. In this event today, we have a great panel. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. We're going to be speaking today about the new perspective, new economic perspective for the cannabis business for Ecuador, based on what the Minister of Production and Foreign Trade, Ivan Ontaneda, made. We will be discussing with top authorities from the Ministry of Production. Our first guest is Diego Borja. Diego is a Sub-secretary for the Agriculture for the Ministry of Production. We will have also the Minister Advisor, a consultant, Jeffrey Leblanc. They have the official voice for all the expat community today. Also, we have Gregg Vernon. Gregg, thank you so much for accepting this invitation, Gregg. Gregg, a little bit of his background. They have a company that is actually working in Colombia, a company that is based in Canada, and you will be correcting me if I'm wrong. But the reason why we wanted to have you in this panel is because we want to also hear the perspective of what is happening there, taking the opportunity that we have the authorities here with us, and you can share with all the expat community here what is happening in Colombia as well. So right now I would like to start with Diego Borja. So if you can please tell us your perspective on what is happening right now with this new set of regulations that they will have to be enforced, or they will be published in the next few weeks. So Diego, the microphone is yours. Thank you. You have to activate your microphone.
Discúlpame, buenas tardes con todos.
Buenas tardes.
Está en español, no sé si tú les puedes luego traducir.
Okay, what if we have, we can ask Jeffrey if he can help us with that. So.
I'm happy to speak in English, but I don't know if I'd be able to help with the translation.
Okay, I'll do that. No problem. So, Diego, por favor, si puede hablar como un minuto y yo voy haciendo la traducción.
Claro que sí, voy a dar ideas cortas y muy concisas para que la traducción sea lo más eficiente.
Gracias.
Primero, hacerles llegar un saludo del ministro Iván Ontaneda, quien ha sido uno de los principales impulsores del desarrollo de este nuevo sector del cultivo e industrialización de la cannabis.
Okay, first I would like to give you greetings from Minister Ivan Ontaneda. He has been the person who has been promoting these new cannabis regulations here in Ecuador.
El cannabis a nivel mundial ya se ha desarrollado en otros países. En el Ecuador estamos en la fase inicial, lo cual nos da una ventaja porque podemos recoger los errores que han cometido los otros países y que han impedido el normal desarrollo de este sector.
Cannabis worldwide has been started in other countries. So from the Ecuadorian government, they have been looking those experience to not make the same mistakes here in our country, in Ecuador.
El sector del cannabis tiene dos áreas en donde se van a desarrollar y donde son diferentes las instituciones que participan.
Okay, the cannabis business as an economical sector has two areas where are going to be developed here in Ecuador.
La primera es el desarrollo del cultivo para lo cual se necesita importar semillas y sembrarlas en el Ecuador. Aquí la normativa está a cargo de Agrocalidad y del Ministerio de Agricultura.
Okay, the first sector is that the development of the growing and importing seeds, and the government agencies, the government entities in charge of that, their name is Agrocalidad, like agro quality, and the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministerio de Agricultura.
Y la segunda fase tiene que ver con, una vez que yo tengo ya la materia prima, que puede haber sido producida aquí en el país o puede haber sido importada, se hace un proceso de transformación que puede ir por varias líneas. La principal, la que mayor se comercializa a nivel mundial, es la extracción de aceite, pero también hay la industria textil, la industria de biocombustibles, la industria de fármacos y medicinas, la industria de productos de reemplazo al plástico, entre otros.
Okay, the second phase of the second sector of this business, we're talking about the raw materials, the transformation from raw materials to several line of products, the final products like oil, also for the for how can I say it? If Jeffrey, you can help me with biocombustibles, and the pharmacy for the plastic, for fabrics. Yeah, siga por favor.
Biofuels.
Biofuels, yeah. Thank
Sorry,
you.
I was on mute, but yeah, biofuels. Yeah.
Biofuels, thank you.
Ok, entonces teniendo claro estas dos áreas, el tema agrícola, o sea, la importación de semillas y el cultivo de esas semillas, y el tema de industrialización, que es la extracción de los diferentes productos, es que podemos ver en qué situación estamos actualmente.
Okay, taking in consideration for these two sectors, the agriculture and the growing of the plants, and also the industrialization of this, it is where we have to see where we're going as a country.
A ver, sobre el cultivo, hubo una reforma a la ley que se dio en diciembre del año anterior y que establece que el Ministerio de Agricultura debe tener listo el reglamento para importación de semillas y desarrollo del cultivo máximo hasta octubre de este año. Sin embargo, el Ministerio de Agricultura lo va a entregar en junio, es decir, el próximo mes.
Okay, thank you. We have Romina just tell me, Romina, thank you for that. She just informed me that we have a person who will be helping us with the translation as well. But I just want to get more. For the growing of the plants, we have a change on the law and on December of 2019. Just a little parenthesis here. Romina, could you please help setting up for that attendee to help us with the translation? Could you please be speaking with him? So as I was saying, the change we have a change on the law on December 2019, where this is basically putting the responsibility for the Ministry of Agriculture to come with the regulations or the new set of laws for this cannabis industry. So, Diego, continúe, por favor.
Entonces, hoy día, no es todavía posible ni desarrollar cultivo ni importar semillas. Esto sucederá una vez que se tenga el reglamento del Ministerio de Agricultura en junio.
Okay, as today, it is not possible to grow the cannabis in Ecuador, to start any plantation, or also to import any seeds. The regulations will come on June, which is next month. As I said before, it will be in charge of the Ministry of Agriculture. So, Diego, continue.
Claro. Una vez que se permita el cultivo, vale aclarar que existen el cannabis psicoactivo y el cannabis no psicoactivo. Es decir, el cannabis psicoactivo, que se conoce como marihuana, y el cannabis no psicoactivo, que se conoce como cáñamo. Obviamente, el primero no va a estar permitido el cultivo, el segundo sí.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thank you, Diego. We have the person that is ready right now. So, Romina, if you can have him be part of our panel right now.
Sobre el cannabis.
Diego, un momento,
Sí,
por favor.
claro.
Ya nos están colocando una persona para que nos empiece a colaborar con esta parte.
Claro.
Le pido disculpas.
¿Desea que empiece ahora? Disculpe.
Sí, por favor.
Okay, so Diego was saying that there are two types of cannabis plants, psychoactive and non-psychoactive. The non-psychoactive are known as hemp in English, and those are the ones that will be permitted in Ecuador, not the psychoactive variety.
Correcto. En el cannabis no psicoactivo hay a su vez dos tipos de cultivos. El cannabis no psicoactivo de tamaño menor, parecido en su forma a la marihuana, y el cannabis o cáñamo de uso industrial, que es de gran tamaño, similar a la caña de azúcar.
The non-psychoactive variety of cannabis, there are two types. Again, one, the smaller, that is similar to, it looks like marijuana, looks like the psychoactive, and there's a larger variety that looks more like sugar cane.
Es por el parecido del cultivo de cannabis, el de menor tamaño, con el cultivo de marihuana, que solamente se va a permitir la siembra bajo una licencia que la otorga el Ministerio de Agricultura.
Because of the smaller varieties' similarity to marijuana, they will only be permitted to be cultivated with license, under license.
Es decir, no se va a permitir el autocultivo.
In other words, they won't allow the self-cultivation or at home.
Correcto. Sobre el cultivo de cáñamo de uso industrial, este es un cultivo extensivo. Por lo general se siembra en localidades tropicales. Es un cultivo que es muy barato de sembrar, pero también los márgenes de ganancia son bajos, y que normalmente se lo utiliza para fibras textiles, para la extracción de semillas para la alimentación, para combustibles y para otro tipo de usos industriales de este tipo.
The larger variety is generally planted in large fields, large areas, and it's very cheap to plant and cultivate, but it has low profit margins. For that reason, well, it's used mostly for producing textiles, seeds, that kind of food industry products.
Por el otro lado, el cannabis no psicoactivo de menor tamaño, ese se lo siembra por lo general bajo invernadero, y es el que sirve para la extracción de aceites y para usos medicinales. Obviamente, ese cultivo, el desarrollo de ese cultivo es mucho más costoso.
The smaller variety is usually produced or planted in greenhouses, and that is what's used for extracting oils and that type of thing. And it's much more expensive to produce. And ¿cuál fue el final, Diego? No sé, me olvidé.
Que es el cultivo por hectárea es mucho más costoso.
It's also much more expensive to cultivate per acre.
Porque requiere invernadero, semilla especializada y es un sistema tecnológicamente más intensivo.
The reason for that is because it needs a greenhouse, specific seeds, and it takes more technological care.
Finalmente, si hacemos una comparación entre las diferentes posibilidades del cultivo de cannabis, tenemos el cannabis industrial en grandes extensiones, es bajo en el costo de producción, su riesgo es bajo, pero a su vez su rentabilidad es baja. Mientras que si vemos el cannabis que se lo siembra en invernadero o que también se lo puede sembrar sin invernadero, pero con mecanismos tecnológicos, digamos, más complejos, ahí los costos de producción son mucho más elevados, el riesgo también es mucho más elevado, pero obviamente la rentabilidad es mayor.
So to review, there are the two varieties. The industrial cannabis is planted much easier, much cheaper, larger areas, but it doesn't give as much profit. The smaller one has, it's more difficult to take care of. You have to have greenhouses and much more specific, and you have to take a lot more care of it, but it has a lot more benefits.
El Ministerio de Agricultura hizo recientemente una presentación bastante buena que está en YouTube y yo les he puesto la dirección en el chat de esta reunión.
The Ministry of Agriculture has made a video that Diego Borja put in the chat or the description so that we can check it out. It's a very complete explanation of the varieties and the investigation that they made.
Ahora, sobre la segunda parte, que es ya el uso de la materia prima para hacer diferentes productos, hay que considerar que la normativa dependerá del tipo de productos. Por ejemplo, si se van a desarrollar medicinas, se necesitará la normativa propia de las medicinas. Si se va a desarrollar textiles, se necesitará la norma propia del desarrollo de textiles. Ahí se está buscando identificar normativa internacional para poderla adoptar y sacar esta normativa lo más rápido posible.
For each one of those, we're talking about the use of the materials that we get. The rules, the laws that are made will depend on the use, the end use of the products. For example, if it's medicine or textiles that you're aiming to use the cannabis for, we will have to look at the international field to see what regulations they have set and adopt and make that a local type of regulations.
Eso es tal vez lo más importante que yo les podría decir en un primer momento y que les permite a todos tener una idea más general del cultivo y la industria del cannabis.
That is basically all that I can tell you, well, the most important things that I can tell you right now, so you have a general idea of how Ecuador will set up the cannabis industry.
No sé si ahí quieren abrir un espacio de inquietudes.
Muchas gracias. Vamos a ver que si tienen algunas preguntas, en todo caso me gustaría continuar con Jeffrey y ver ya la posición del ministerio. Okay, we're going to be waiting for Jeffrey's presentation, and I really want to thank to you, Joshua, for your help with the translation. So Jeffrey, could you please tell us from your perspective, and basically I was reading a little bit of your background that is very, very extensive. You have experience working in the tourism industry, and now you have experience working in another part of our very important sector of Ecuador, which is foreign trade. So what is your perspective about what is happening with this new industry in Ecuador?
Great. Well, thank you very much, Marcos. And yeah, I've been working now for this government for about 3 years as an advisor to various ministers, mostly focusing on the attraction of investment. And this particular area, I'm also Canadian, by the way, so I've got a close connection with these issues back home. I was actually, when I got a chance to go back to New Brunswick in about 1.5 years ago, I think the biggest change was seeing all of these cannabis NB stores. So that was probably the biggest change that I noticed during my visit back home. But I think it's great. There's an incredible amount of potential. And if you look at the current pandemic, what has it taught us? I mean, it's taught us that this crisis is forcing us to explore new industries that can provide an economic boost. Ecuador, as you all know, is a country that is filled with many natural resources, and we've been lucky to have some of the best products in the world: cacao, shrimp, bananas, tuna, flowers, the list goes on. But what we are seeing is rather unprecedented, and certain sectors have been hit harder than others: the global flower trade, hospitality and tourism, oil prices. And I think it's causing a lot of financial difficulties for many companies, and unemployment is becoming a serious problem. But what's interesting for this industry is, similar to some of the products that I just mentioned, is that we have great natural conditions. Researchers from the Universidad de Católica have concluded that these plants can grow at any time of the year, and we have the conditions to grow a variety of species, as Diego mentioned. Our location in the middle of the world also offers other advantages. For example, our solar position provides more hours of sunlight throughout the year, and we are surrounded by volcanoes, which means the soil contains organic material ideal for the hemp plant to grow without any problems, so it can be used in textiles and in the production of medicines. But putting the natural conditions to one side, I think our biggest strength, as my colleague Diego can tell you, is that Ecuador is a country with a long agricultural tradition, which is why one of our biggest advantages would be our workforce. And I think from our ministry in particular, our focus is simple. We see this as an industry that will help us create jobs, bring in foreign investment, and also contribute to exports. So for our ministry, which is the Ministry of Production, Foreign Trade, Investments, and Fisheries, it's a particularly interesting opportunity. In regards to exports, I think there's a lot that we can learn from Canada, which is one of the few countries legally exporting medicinal marijuana. And on that note, I would say our immediate strategy right now is, number one, to learn from other countries, such as Canada. And number two, we need to begin understanding the global demand and what opportunities there are abroad. So we have passed this task to our commercial offices, and through these offices, we are beginning to identify market trends that will certainly help us in the development of this industry. We need to assess which countries we'll be competing with, which countries we can export to, and which products our industry should prioritize. As Diego mentioned, I mean, hemp can be used in a variety of ways. It can be used in textiles, food, supplements, cosmetics, personal care products, and it can also be used in industrial applications such as construction materials, biofuels, paper, etc. And I think in addition, from what we know, is there are approximately 30 countries throughout Europe, Asia, and the Americas which allow the cultivation of hemp plants. So it will be important for our ministry to study which countries are doing things well and what mistakes have been made. Furthermore, at our ministry, we have an advantage where we play an active role in international forums and also work, with international organizations. And I think if we were to have success in this industry, we need to make sure that we create these links to develop best practices for the continuation of the industry. And these actions will also demonstrate to national and international companies that we plan to do things correctly. I've got a number of other points in relation to foreign investment and job creation, but maybe if you'd like, we can get that a bit later on after we pass the word to Gregg or to someone else.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, I would like to continue with Gregg because I don't want to lose momentum with the conversation. So Gregg, could you please share with us one of the reasons we, as I said at the beginning, we wanted to have you in this panel is because you are in Colombia. Well, your company works in Colombia, so and you have the experience from Canada. So what you can share with us about it, because the whole purpose on this is to, at the end of the day, is just to bring more stability to the economy of Ecuador, who has been very, very impacted by COVID-19.
Well, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here because this is one of the things that I think is very interesting and truly new. In my lifetime, there have only been 2 new industries. I had started in the resource sector before the tech game started. This is the 2nd new industry in my lifetime, and I think it has huge opportunity. And every day you find additional information that supports bringing this plant back to the legal framework and using the benefits of what we knew 100 years ago with the new science we have today. The aspect of why we chose Colombia, being a Canadian company, is twofold. First, Colombia was actually ready and had legislation in place so you could follow this. But one of the drivers in Colombia, and this applies directly to Ecuador, we have a paper on file that talks about the entry of the flower industry into South America. And at the time the flower industry migrated from California to South America, the labor cost in Colombia was 5% of the labor cost to grow flowers in California. That advantage is here today for both Ecuador and Colombia on the world stage. And this is one of the key advantages with climate that help us create an industry that's going to be very competitive. In Europe and North America, they basically have 1 crop a year unless they grow internally in a greenhouse, whereas we can grow 365 days a year. And when you've got the system in place and the resources and assets operating, that has a huge ability to affect profitability and efficiency. In parallel, the other aspect that can't be overlooked is what's happened with the return of cannabis to the legal industry, mostly driven by the Canadian decision to make it a legal industry, which created a true euphoric boom. We have seen that reside or return back to normal. So unfortunately, if you are an investor, the Canadian industry averages today about 10% of their corporate equity a year and a half or 2 years ago when the boom was on. And that's because we've transitioned from the excitement of, hey, we're going to be able to do this, to the actual day-to-day, what is the amount of money a company makes in this business? And this becomes really important for Ecuador because they have the opportunity to look at what has been done in Canada. And I will use the US as the alternative because those 2 markets have developed very different paths and have created a very different perspective from the economic side. Canada started with a focus on growing and there was a huge investment in greenhouse facilities, with the result that last summer, when Health Canada permitted outdoor grow, the first company to achieve a successful outdoor crop met all of Health Canada's standards, resulted in a cost that was 5% of growing inside a greenhouse. And this year, what you see is all the major companies are closing their greenhouses, and they're all going to move to outdoor grow because they can't sustain the high cost of the systems they put in place for two reasons. One, it's Canada. I'm a Canadian, so I'm used to this. Half of their cost was heat in the winter. We don't have that problem in Ecuador and Colombia. That's a huge advantage. But the other one was just indoor growing versus the American model. And the American model benefited from the legislation that turned hemp is the word they use in the States. Anything below 0.3 THC is an agricultural product, and they grow it like a normal crop. They grow it like corn or wheat. And the net cost of the major constituent of that, which is CBD for the cannabis industry, has dramatically reduced, and the availability is much higher. And I think that's a very key aspect of the focus that is captured in the Ecuadorian legislation. But I also think there are a couple of things that comes off that are they're very important. The definition of hemp and cannabis is based on historical norms of what those genetics were. Our company today is growing a hemp cannabis cross that is a hemp plant that makes one of the cannabinoids, which is CBG. And very soon you're going to find all of those definitions become very blurred in what is hemp and what is cannabis. And the definition of using 1% THC becomes very useful. I also think it's important to look at one of the things that I find enlightening. I have a picture of a combine in a field in Spain, and that company produces 25% of the morphine in the world, and it's grown outdoors. And I think one of the things that happened in Canada, they had this assumption that if it was pharmaceutical, it would have to be grown in a greenhouse, has been their major economic barrier to success, because they can't afford to do that for what is the current cannabis industry. The current medical cannabis industry in most mature countries is supported still 50% by smoking. And they smoke biomass. They don't actually do an extraction. They don't make a medicine. It's a natural medicine. And that has become a very real issue when we look at the largest markets which we expect to be able to export to, and that today is the United States. We can be very cost competitive with the United States, but we have to look at how they do it. And they grow cannabis for the CBD market exactly as was described for hemp. And if your limit is 1%, those new genetics will be a very sweet target for the Ecuador system to produce an export product quickly. My experience in Colombia has been the second aspect, which is in the new countries, especially with what happened to the investment community in Canada, is to focus on success being time to commercial crops. If you look at the two front runners in Colombia, they've been at this game for 4 years, and they basically haven't started exporting yet. And with what we see and with the countries where this has been done successfully, I think Ecuador can find very key points to make that time much shorter, and it'll be a much more successful commercial launch of that product line in Ecuador. I think that the equatorial growing, the elevation lets you pick climates, that Ecuador, like Colombia, is an ideal place on a world scale to be cost competitive, provided we look at the things that get us to growing quicker. If seed selection, using countries that have registered strains that are properly identified, allowing them to be imported for growing, that kind of measure, something that Colombia has done a very good job on. something that's very different, for example, in the US, where they don't have a system to register. You basically buy on the name of the seller. There is no formal system to understand what those seeds are. Very similar in Spain. You can buy seeds from Spain, but they don't have a registered system of creating commercial product. Those lead me to some of the things that Ecuador can pick up in the marketplace. Where things have really changed in the last 2 years. Everything is new, and everything is new on the consumer side as to what is selling, what people need to be able to export to produce. Profit is very dynamic.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much. And one of the reasons when I was preparing this event, some of the research I was making, it was to see the legislation of Colombia. And one of the things that I personally noticed is that Colombia, they started this in July of 2019 when they have their initial stages with the new law, new regulations. And something that Greg mentioned is that as today, they have an expert so those are one of the issues, and I've seen one of the questions that it comes over again. So I would like to ask Diego, because the question that I see here that is being repeated very often, it is about the licensing, about the permits, and one of the reasons why we wanted to have the government here with us, it is because one of the things that our attendees, they would like to know is what is the process on how Expedite will be on getting the permits, the licensing to grow, to export. I mean, everything that it is involved. So I'm going to make the translation here. Joshua, if you can help us with this part. So, Diego, lo que decía yo es que una de las preguntas que se repite dentro de nuestras personas que están atendiendo es el tema de las licencias o los permisos que se necesitan. Un poco de antecedente lo colocaba yo que en el año 2016 Colombia empezó con todo este proceso, pero hasta la fecha ellos no han exportado. Y una de las cosas que quiero salvar y recalcar de lo que Greg nos acaba de indicar es que hasta la fecha de hoy ellos no han hecho ninguna exportación. Si bien Colombia empezaron primero, no necesariamente significa que lo van a hacer mejor. Entonces, nuestra oportunidad aquí en Ecuador, ¿qué es lo que podemos hacer? Y especialmente poder dar una respuesta. Y el tema de permisos. So, por favor, si nos puede ayudar. Y Joshua, que tradujo hace un momento, va a hacer la traducción, por favor. La misma temática. El micrófono, por favor.
Hay licencias en diferentes partes del proceso. Hay unas licencias para importar la semilla. Luego hay una licencia para cultivar esa semilla. Y luego hay, no licencias, pero sí normativas para los productos que se obtienen de ese cultivo. Por ejemplo, si uno va a desarrollar un aceite obtenido de la cannabis para uso de personas, ese producto tendrá que cumplir con la normativa vigente sobre aceites, en general sobre aceites. Y eso lo controla el ARSA y el INI, ¿no? Entonces,
un momento para traducir.
Sí,
Joshua.
Okay, so what Diego was saying is that there are different types of licenses or permits for different parts of the process. First off, there's licenses, for example, for importing the seeds, permission for cultivating it, and then when you're producing it, when you're turning the cultivated cannabis into products, for example, oil, if you were to make CBD oil, then that would have to fill the regulations that the Ecuadorian quality governments or quality enterprises like the ARSA have. They have to be to complete or to fill all of these requirements for the specific product that's produced.
Entonces, ahorita se está en proceso de construcción de las normativas. La más importante es la que permita traer semillas y obtener la licencia para sembrar esas semillas a cargo del Ministerio de Agricultura.
Right now, those regulations are in the process of being completed. The most important, the ones that they're looking at first, are the regulations for getting the license to import and cultivate.
Hemos tenido varias conversaciones con el Ministerio de Agricultura y hemos coincidido, ellos y nosotros, que esta normativa que está construyendo el Ministerio de Agricultura debería evitar los errores que cometieron otros países como Colombia y que luego complicaron el cultivo, el procesamiento y la exportación.
So they've been in contact with specifically with the Ministerio de Agricultura, the Ministry of Agriculture, and what they're trying to do is making sure that the rules that are set in place for Ecuador will avoid the errors that other countries have made. For example, in Colombia, that the rules that were made there that later made it more difficult to cultivate and export the product.
Es así que tanto el Ministerio de Agricultura como el Ministerio de la Producción han gestionado varias cooperaciones de países de la región, como Colombia, como Uruguay y otros más, para que ellos nos puedan transferir este conocimiento de los aciertos y de los desaciertos que tuvieron en la construcción de su normativa.
So the ministries of agriculture and production have asked for help from neighboring countries or other countries that have already started them, like Colombia, Uruguay, for the government officials in those countries to tell us straight up, straightforward, what problems they've had, what have been some of the failures in their rules, so that we can avoid them here in Ecuador.
Eso es lo que les podría decir con respecto a la inquietud que me plantearon.
So that would be the answer that Diego Borja would have to that question.
Hello, Marcos. I would like to add a couple points that relate directly to what Diego has said. I think it's very telling that the largest cannabis company in the world has closed office and are selling their assets in Colombia and returning to a different platform where they're interested in Colombia as a market, but not as a cultivation site. And some of that is related to the things that I know Diego will be able to optimize in a new legislative package. And one of the things that I hope there's an opportunity to do is for the cannabis industry players to provide some input to the legislation program that's being developed by Ecuador and hear what some of the things that we have found problematic and some of the things that are really dynamically changing that need to be addressed so that it's okay when we get there in the near future.
Just to add on that, if I may, Marcos and Greg, I think, yeah, great points from Diego in relation to licensing and regulations, and to try not to, duplicate, to make the same mistakes that other countries have. And one thing that I'd like to bring up is, in addition to licensing and regulation, we also need to create, the right incentives. I think that would be something that, would be especially beneficial for companies such as Gregg's. And since the beginning of this government, one of our main policies has been, to attract foreign investment through the creation of tax incentives. The incentives that we created, apply to a wide range of sectors and vary according to sector and location. So for example, the tourism sector, new investments in Quito or Guayaquil, you may get an 8-year income tax exemption, whereas Manabí and Esmeraldas, you can have up to 20-year income tax exemption. And I think at our ministry, we have the capability of doing an assessment and proposing what, say, tax incentives or what other incentives could apply to this particular industry. So I think input from companies such as yourself and different governments, such as the Canadian government, Colombia, other actors, would be really beneficial, so that we can put the right incentives on the table to help with production and exports as well.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. Marcos is having some technical problems, so we are going to read some questions from the audience. So Joshua, if you can help us with the questions, please.
Very well. The first question is, what will Ecuador put in place to make the sector competitive and attractive for foreign investment? For example, why invest in Ecuador versus any other foreign jurisdiction who are offering tax incentives, etc.?
Okay, so, well, I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, the main thing that we need to demonstrate, in addition to, say, tax incentives, is legal security. Anyone that comes to Ecuador wants to know that their investment is going to be safe. And at our ministry, you can sign, for example, an investment contract that will give you access to international arbitration, and secure those the legal security that you need for the duration of your contract. I think that is probably the number one point. So was there another, are the questions in the, let me open it up here.
The questions are in the Q&A box.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find this one here to see if.
The very top, 3:13 p.m.
Yeah, so what will we put in place to make it more competitive and attractive? I think that question will be better answered in coming weeks, because we're still looking at what type of specific incentives we can put forth. But I know that given the last bundle of incentives that we introduced at the starting of this government, they were across the board, throughout various sectors. So we could probably give you a better answer in the next few weeks once we put forth a little bit more analysis.
Thanks, Jeffrey. The second question might be for Diego. It's, how does one find out about how to apply for a license to grow a smaller variety of hemp? I don't know if you can answer that, Jeffrey, or should I translate that for Diego?
Diego, would you like to take this one?
Sí, ¿me plantearon una pregunta?
Sí, la pregunta es, ¿cómo uno se va a averiguar cómo solicitar, cómo poner la solicitud para un permiso, para criar la variedad pequeña de cannabis?
Debemos esperar que el Ministerio de Agricultura oficialice el reglamento, lo cual se ha indicado que va a ser el 21 de junio de este año.
Okay, so they say that June 21st, the Ministry of Agriculture will have completed the regulations, and so then after that we'll know the details of that. Thank you. Muchas gracias, Diego. Marcos, are you ready to continue? Your audio is not connected, it seems. Okay. It's a está en el dispositivo móvil. Si es que está abajo a la parte izquierda, va a haber una lineecita blanca que dice usar el audio del dispositivo. Creo que ahí es donde tienen que presionar. Justo encima. Okay, so the next question is, what extraction process will be used? Anyone? Jeffrey, do we know the answer?
Extraction process is a bit too technical for me. I don't know if Diego, if you know about the extraction process.
Can I just frame the question? Is Ecuador looking at allowing the export of dried flower?
Diego, la pregunta que Greg hizo fue si Ecuador está buscando legalizar el proceso para exportar la flor seca.
La flor seca. Sí, también se está considerando dentro de los productos que se podría aprovechar.
So yes, that would be one of the possible answer or possible process products.
One of the reasons why that's an important decision is half the market in North America is dry flower in the cannabis industry. And it's not just for recreational use, but also for medicinal and for pure CBD dry flower.
Thank you, Greg. Let's see, I'm looking for the next question. Pregunta para Diego Borja. Dice, pregunta sobre las licencias, tal vez pueda contestar. Sí, la empresa de uno tiene la licencia para criar las variedades pequeñas, para producir aceite. La compañía con la licencia podría propagar las plantas, como hacer una relación con granjeros locales o productores locales para criar clones. Y si los granjeros o los productores locales podrían hacer la producción bajo la misma licencia grande principal, o cada agricultor local tendría que tener la licencia individualmente. Disculpe, Diego, está silenciado.
Disculpas. No tendría respuesta para estas preguntas porque actualmente estamos todos a la espera de que salga el reglamento en donde va a estar justamente establecida todas estas directrices que permitirán conocer el proceso para importar semillas, para sembrar, para obtener la licencia, para apoyar a otros agricultores. Es decir, creo que todos estamos a la expectativa de que salga este reglamento y con eso tendremos más claras las condiciones con las cuales se va a desarrollar el sector.
So all of the questions relating to licensing and production, well, we're on hold, waiting for the regulations to come through in the government on, he said, June 21st, I think. A question about from James Vickery, are there market studies available that indicate the demand and quality requirements for products such as CBD oil?
I'm sure that there's market studies that are available, but I can tell you right now that what we're trying to do with our commercial offices, like I mentioned earlier, is to identify and to do our own report. So when that report is ready, it'd be great if we could share it with all of you. But up until now, our ministry doesn't have its own internal report. You need to look at the external reports from other organizations and countries.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Another question, you may have the answer, maybe not, is are we looking for permission in Ecuador to allow importation of cannabis oil for medicinal purposes besides local production?
Well, I think that if we want to be an exporter of medicinal products such as Canada, then we also need to be open to the importation as well. I don't know specifically regarding oil, but I'm assuming that's on the table.
Thank you, Jeffrey. The question about hectareas to be grown per producer, I'm sure that's also up in the air still. Those will be released later. Limits on hemp. And for Greg, Tyler says, pending final regulations, Agriculture Ministry has stated that in order to obtain a license, a company must have buyers lined up nationally or internationally in order to avoid license and land speculation. Can I get your view on that?
I think the clarification is required relates to whether that's for the medical application and sale or for the hemp application and sale. There's a very large difference, especially for international treaty, if you have a THC product or if you have a THC free or a very low THC product. And I think that's a key part of answering that question. It's very easy to find a letter of intent to buy because there are a lot of buyers in the consuming countries. It does seem to me a bit of an impediment to creating an active open industry for growing low THC agricultural product and compete with somebody like the US where they don't have conditions like that.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Joshua. We have extended a lot more of what I was expecting to have this meeting, but absolutely, this is very passionate topic, and we can be speaking here for hours. But I know our panelists, they are very, very busy, and I will like to give a special thanks to all of you for being with us. I would like to ask Diego a final message to the attendees here. Just it will be something very, very summarized on what you have to say to the expat community living here in Ecuador, keeping in mind that all of our attendees they're from North America. Joshua, if you can help me with that.
Sí, of course, Marcos. So, Diego, Marcos le pidió que si es que pudiera dar un comentario final en resumen para toda la comunidad expatriada o norteamericana que está viviendo aquí, en conclusión.
Claro. Bueno, primero indicar que el cultivo y el procesamiento de cannabis brinda una importante oportunidad de inversión en el país y la prioridad del gobierno y del ministerio es que este sector tenga la menor cantidad de requisitos y de trámites para que se pueda desarrollar bien y para que se pueda sobre todo pensar en la exportación de los productos. Ese tal vez es un primer mensaje.
So first off, remembering that this new field, the cultivation and processing of cannabis, can provide a very special opportunity to Ecuador. And so the government the ministries are, the goal that they have is to have the easiest amount of requirements so that people can get involved in the business as easily as possible.
Un segundo mensaje tendría que ver con las ventajas que ofrece el país, las ventajas naturales que ofrece el país para el desarrollo de nuevos cultivos y de nuevos sectores, como es el caso de la cannabis, ya sea por los diferentes pisos climáticos, por las condiciones climáticas y por las horas de sol. Me parece que hay importantes condiciones para desarrollar el cultivo. Y por el otro lado, hay ya una experiencia importante en el desarrollo de cultivos bajo invernadero, ya sea en flores, ya sea en frutas o ya sea en hortalizas, lo cual permite decir que hay las condiciones climáticas necesarias y también hay las habilidades en los trabajadores para desarrollar este cultivo.
So first off, the country naturally has several significant advantages. It has lots of different climate floors, or as you would say, levels, different climate inside the country naturally. The same amount of sunlight hours every day, things that lead to the natural advantage of production of different and new products, or like, for example, cannabis. And also there are already in several places of the country, all over the country, systems of production, of greenhouse production, like the flowers and other industries. So there are people who know how to produce things, and they will be able to enter this business in easily without many difficulties.
Y finalmente, indicarles que el Ministerio de Producción está siempre presto para colaborar, para apoyar con todos los inversionistas que estén interesados en desarrollar este sector o cualquier otro sector. Esa es nuestra razón de ser.
And finally, the Ministry of Production is ready and open for any offers of cooperation with investors, and hoping that this will attract many more of those. That's what their reason for being is, and expect or hope for any contact.
Thank you so much, everyone, for our attendees, for your time, for your valuable time. Greg, Jeffrey, Diego, Joshua, it has been very enlightening to have all this information. I have to say that when I started making the research for this event, it is a very challenging new process, but it is not impossible. Other countries are doing this, and Ecuador is very capable to do this. We just have to deal with some day-to-day, like new regulations that we probably in the future we will have. But we have here the government representatives, so I hope the message will get there. I know it will. And thank you so much again for your time, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcos. Thank you very much.
Gracias, hasta luego.